So I'll keep on painting, don't care if I fall. He splash on the
Good
canvas.
news. The parts for the Elegoo will be on Thursday. Some bad news is that I'm going to be out of town for a week or two, so I'm not going to be able to really do much. But I am now, I think, ready to start the priming video. And the reason for that is my DJI mics came in. I had the wireless Go's. I continued to have charging problems with them, and I was struggling with how to get them into some of the equipment that I will have to go through here in a second. So, like, we'll get into all that, but we're ready to start talking about priming. So when we prime our figures, depending on how you're priming, you're probably either going to use a rattle can or you can actually just airbrush prime on. Airbrushing and rattle canning, you want to have either ventilation, which they have paint boxes for, or a respirator. I don't have a lot of space outside that I can do this work in because of our HOA, so I'm restricted to doing work inside. So I have a professional grade respirator. This is kind of what they would use in a paint booth, like if they're painting a car. This protects you against particulates and a lot of the fumes. And then you just need your primer. Now, there's a lot of colors for primers out there, but 90% of the time, you're going to be relying on black. Some colors just work better with another primer, like pink primer works really well for yellow, makes it pop really well. I don't really understand why. And a lot of times, if you're doing something that is going to be like an energy bolt or something that has a high radiance, I would generally do that in white versus black because you're going to spend more energy than is worth trying to cover the black over and over and over again. But like I said, for 90% of the time, you're going to use black. I also really like this specific one from Citadel. It's been really good. There's a million other brands. Army Painter makes one. And then you have your Target. This is literally a box, and this is actually just a platform that I printed in the X1C. The parts go on this. The reason is, if you paint onto corrugate, it'll work, but every second or third time, the corrugate gets so drenched with paint that it will start to peel off on your parts. You use this on the not textured side, on the flat side, so that you don't risk it affecting the paint. You just set your parts on there and you don't have to worry about it, but you still have something you can use internally and still get stuff painted.
So one of the things that I can do now that I couldn't before, specifically with the wireless Robe, is that the DJI mic is actually small enough to fit into this chamber here. So I can still use the respirator and be around relatively dangerous chemicals, but still not have to worry about you not understanding me. So it gives me a way to safely do things with primer, varnish, airbrushing, because I'm already have to work in an enclosed area, that you don't also have to worry about hearing it through a tin can. Okay, so to do this, we're going to set the part onto the plastic base. This gives us a target to keep the corrugate from getting overloaded, and we're just going to shake up the rattle can a lot. And we're going to get distance, and we're going to take small bursts, like, and you're just going to do this until it's as covered as you can get it. Don't worry, there are sections we have not gotten to yet. We will get those after that dries. We'll turn it over to get to the other sections. So, this is one of the parts from the first pass of Delta printing. This was actually a test for magnet socketing, where I modified the original STL to allow for magnets. I don't want to try sanding the other part yet, so I wanted to go over what we're looking for. You should see these divots here that are left over from the actual supports. So what we can do is essentially take a Dremel fine tip and go over these areas. I would recommend wearing a respirator for this just because it's fine particulate. But you can see with a very thin layer of sanding, you're able to level that surface out. You always got to be careful not to remove details in doing it if you're using a sander. That's why I like this specific tip, which is a point. You can either target a very small area by using that section of it, or you can get larger areas that way. So I'm going to try to remove some of these, a lot more over here. This may be counterintuitive because you're like, wait, but you're destroying the figure. You're not. It's an intermediary step to get it to where you don't have these weird anomalies when you go paint it. And it will produce a better output when you remove these. This is a weird little vibrator going on. And this one actually didn't have a lot. So we'll just go through and sand as many of them as we can away. See how that looks. See these still here. You don't want to press down a lot. You're just trying to level this, give you a smooth surface, and that's it. Not trying to dig a hole in it.
So when the part's dry, you end up with this really kind of matte, in most cases, sheen. What I try to do is I have a very different mentality for painting than a lot of the big players like, you know, Mamacon and El Miniaturista, in the fact that I'm not as big into shading from darkest to lightest when I'm painting. It's about body of volume that has to be painted. So Delta, for example, is mostly going to be black. So the benefit to priming black is that's the base tone. And that's maybe just the lazy fuck in me, but that's the approach I take for just about everything. So if her base tone was brown, I might still do black as a primer, but if you can prime in the color closest to what your target is, it's just less surface area that you have to cover. So then essentially you're just looking at the details, like is this line supposed to be colored, are these gemstones, is this silver, etc. And then it lets the primer do a lot of the work. And one of the big reasons for that is getting a clean, consistent coat like this with a paintbrush is nigh impossible. I mean, you can do it with a lot of work and dedication, or you can atomize paint, which is what the rattle can's doing or the airbrush is doing. And then it's just a more uniform application. The one thing to keep in mind is if you have to cover a color up completely, black's not the color you want to cover up completely. That's why I was saying if you're going to be doing something that is very foundationally bright, you're probably going to want to start with a white primer. They make a Citadel Chaos White. I have it in the cabinet over there. I just very rarely use it. So that's the foundations for priming. It's not really complicated. The hardest part is finding a way to do it safely, just like with airbrushing. You could, in theory, get a paint box and use that. I would feel way more comfortable with a paint box with a ventilator just for airbrushing, because airbrushes don't produce the fumes that this thing do. The errors or the warnings all over this thing are pretty scary. Flash fires are always fun, but it's essentially just spray at a distance, short control bursts, like it's an assault rifle and machine gun. Die, motherfucker, die. Die, motherfucker, die. You don't want to hold it down because then you apply a lot. You end up getting pooling on the part. It may dry awkwardly. And then you may actually have to sand and reprime or just kind of scrap or just try to work around it. The thing that I will tell you all is it will never be perfect. Don't worry about it. This whole process is a game of layers. So you may look at this and be like, this looks like horseshit. And it will, I mean, we haven't really done anything yet. It's just you're setting a foundation on which to do some work. The reason I'm even painting this is because we will use this in the video where we talk about doing water sliding. This is a sacrificial figure in some cases. And this was an extra piece when I printed for doing magnets for Delta. So I was like, it'll make sense to use as a point of reference, given an example for sanding. Also, I will point out, magnets are an option, but this is a small figure. This is probably 1/6 or 1/7. The magnets that you can fit 3x1 are not going to have the actual magnetic strength to hold the weight of the resin together. So it's not until you get to like 1/5 or 1/4 size where magnets make sense, because a lot of the male connectors, you can actually have magnets on each side plus the center. There's just a lot more space. The magnets are larger, which means they have more pull. It's a great thing when it works. Like I have a Nicole Damara figure from K9 Studios, and that's a 1/4 size. So keep that in mind. That's the first time I'd ever seen a figure that had magnets, and it's just very satisfying to, like, when you attach the chest and the waist together, it just locks together and you don't worry about it. Arms and legs are the same way. Can't do it with these. They're too small. It's not a big deal. The way these are made, there's plenty of space for mechanical connection for CA gel. This was an experiment, and it became a sacrificial figure for the purpose of education.